Hello and welcome. Today, we're riding back in time to meet the ancient world S equivalent of a battle tank, the Roman Cataphract. These weren't your typical Roman soldiers. These were elite, heavily armored cavalrymen, encased in iron from head to toe, riding equally armored horses. They were a terrifying sight on the battlefield and often the decisive factor in Rome's campaigns, especially in the East. So, grab your helmet and saddle up as we explore the rise, dominance, and eventual decline of these incredible armored warriors. Now, Rome wasn't the first to dream up the idea of armored cavalry. The concept actually has deep roots in the ancient East. Early armies, like those of the Assyrians, favored light, swift cavalry for scouting and quick strikes. But as warfare evolved, so did tactics. The strategic value of a heavily protected rider who could smash through enemy lines became undeniable. The Persians were true pioneers here, with their formidable ****. These units featured both horse and rider decked out in armor, and they specialized in shock tactics, charging with overwhelming force to shatter enemy formations. This wasn't just a fleeting trend. Alexander the Great saw their potential and incorporated similar units into his Macedonian army, proving their worth time and time again. These early innovators laid the groundwork for what would eventually become a cornerstone of Roman military strategy. As the Roman Republic expanded its borders eastward, its legions started clashing with military traditions they had never encountered before. In the 2nd century BC, they faced the Seleucid Empire in battles like Thermopylae and Magnesia. The Seleucids deployed their own version of heavily armored cavalry, giving the Romans a taste of what these units could do, while the disciplined and flexible Roman legions ultimately triumphed. These encounters planted a seed. The Romans saw the potential of heavy cavalry, but they hadn't yet felt the full, devastating force of a truly expert-mounted army. That all changed with a disastrous confrontation that would haunt Rome for decades. The year is 53 BC, and the place is Carrhae, a dusty plain in modern-day Turkey. A Roman army, led by the ambitious Crassus, marches into the heart of the Parthian Empire. The Romans, masters of infantry combat, were supremely confident, but they were about to face a nightmare they couldn't have imagined. The Parthians unleashed a style of warfare completely alien to the legions. At the core of their army were the Cataphracts, supported by swarms of mobile horse archers. The Parthian strategy was terrifyingly effective. The horse archers would ride in, shower the Roman ranks with arrows, and then retreat before the legions could respond. When the frustrated Romans broke formation to give chase, the Parthian Cataphracts would charge. These armored behemoths crashed into the exposed Roman flanks, their long lances punching through shields and armor. The Romans were encircled, exhausted, and systematically destroyed. The Battle of Carrhae was a catastrophic defeat that cost Rome thousands of soldiers and one of its leading men. More importantly, it was a brutal lesson. It proved beyond any doubt that Rome desperately needed to develop its own effective heavy cavalry to survive on its eastern frontier. The age of the Roman Cataphract was about to begin. Shaken by the disaster at Carrhae, Rome knew it had to adapt or risk being overwhelmed. The solution wasn't just to copy the Parthians, but to integrate their tactics into the Roman military machine. They began by recruiting cavalrymen from eastern regions already famous for their horse riding skills, like the Sarmatians. These warriors were born in the saddle and brought a wealth of experience with them. Alongside these auxiliaries, Rome began training its own soldiers in the art of heavy cavalry warfare. The first recorded use of Roman-style cataphracts came during the Great Jewish Revolt in 67 AD. The future Emperor Vespasian deployed these new units as auxiliary forces. They weren't yet a fully integrated, standard part of the army, but their presence marked a crucial step. Rome was experimenting, learning and refining its approach to armored cavalry. This was the trial run, the field test that would pave the way for a new kind of Roman soldier. The formal establishment of regular cataphract units in the Roman army truly began under the reign of Emperor Hadrian, around the year 130 AD. By this time, the need for specialized cavalry was undeniable. Rome's eastern rivals, the Parthians and later the Sassanids, continued to rely on powerful mounted armies, and Hadrian recognized that Rome needed a permanent counterforce. These early official units were a starting point. The armor was often partial, protecting the most vital areas of the horse and rider, without being excessively heavy. This was a classic Roman approach: take an idea, test it, and then perfect it. Over time, as armor-making techniques improved and the strategic need grew, the cataphracts evolved. Later versions featured incredibly comprehensive armor systems. We're talking about full-body scale armor, or chainmail for the rider, a multi-piece metal helmet, and even full barding for the horse, covering it from head to tail. The goal was to create the perfect balance between near-impenetrable defense and the mobility needed to perform on the battlefield. Of course, fielding an army of walking tanks came with its own set of challenges. First and foremost was the cost. Creating and maintaining a single set of cataphract armor was enormously expensive. Each piece, from the tiny bronze or iron scales sewn onto a leather backing to the intricately crafted helmets, required immense resources and skilled labor. Outfitting an entire unit was a massive undertaking for the state. Then there was the weight. All that metal, while offering incredible protection, placed a huge strain on the horse. It limited their speed and endurance, meaning cataphracts weren't suited for every type of terrain or mission. They were specialists, designed for the shock charge on open plains, not for chasing skirmishers through the mountains. To compensate for these weaknesses, Roman commanders became masters of combined arms tactics. They would often support their cataphracts with lighter auxiliary forces, such as mounted archers or light cavalry, who could screen the flanks, harass the enemy, and pursue any who tried to flee. This created a flexible and deadly combination, maximizing the raw power of the Cataphracts while covering their vulnerabilities. So, what kind of weapons did these armored giants carry into battle? Their primary weapon was the Contos *, a fearsome piece of equipment. This was a massive two-handed spear, often around 12 feet long, because it required both hands to wield. Riders couldn't carry a large shield, which is why their heavy body armor was so essential. A charging line of cataphracts leveling their contoy was an unstoppable force, capable of punching through enemy shields, armor, and men with devastating impact. For closer engagements, after the initial charge had broken the enemy's spirit and formation, they carried secondary weapons. A spatha the Roman longsword, or a dagger was essential for mopping up or defending themselves if they were unhurt. Becoming a cataphract wasn't easy. Training was incredibly rigorous and reserved for the most experienced and skilled horsemen in the army. It involved brutal physical conditioning to handle the weight of the armor, endless drills to master formation riding, and countless hours in simulated battles to prepare for the chaos of real combat. Only the best of the best earned the right to wear the iron scales of a Roman cataphract. The cataphracts represented the pinnacle of Roman mounted warfare, the elite of the elite. For centuries, they dominated the battlefields of the East, a symbol of Roman adaptability and power. But like the empire itself, their time eventually came to an end. The decline of the cataphracts was a slow process, driven by a combination of factors. Internally, the Roman Empire was plagued by political instability and economic crises during the 3rd century and beyond. The immense cost of producing their armor and breeding and maintaining their powerful war horses became an unsustainable burden. Externally, the nature of warfare was changing once again. Rome faced new threats from highly mobile nomadic groups who favored faster, more flexible cavalry tactics. The heavy, ponderous cataphracts, while powerful, were often too slow to counter these hit-and-run strategies. Even under late emperors like Diocletian and Constantine, who reformed the army, cataphracts remained in service. Particularly in the eastern provinces where their legacy was strongest. However, their numbers dwindled, and their central role in Roman strategy diminished as military priorities shifted. But despite their eventual fade from the battlefield, the legacy of the Roman cataphracts is undeniable. They were a testament to Rome's incredible ability to learn from its enemies and turn a weakness into a strength. Their influence echoed down through the centuries, directly inspiring the development of the heavily armored knights of medieval Europe. The image of a fully armored warrior on a fully armored horse, charging with lance leveled, is a direct descendant of the Roman cataphract. They were more than just soldiers. They were a fusion of Eastern tradition and Roman engineering, a force that shaped the course of military history and left an indelible mark on the art of war. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the world of Rome's armored cavalry. If you enjoyed this look into military history, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories from the ancient world. Let me know in the comments what topic you'd like to see next. Until then, stay curious.